Invictus Unconquered. And you don't have to go very far to find some unconquered and really inspirational people. If your country is actually participating in the Invictus Games, you can go to your country's website and it will feature all the details about your team. Of course, I went to the Australian Invictus website and I spent a good 2.5 hours with my head buried in my iPad learning about the team that was going to represent us in Dusseldorf. And it was fascinating because they went into the background, how they served, what happened to them, what led them to actually even have the idea of competing in the Invictus Games. And they also asked them a very poignant question at the end of every team member's interview. And it was, what does unconquered mean to you? And I really want to share some of the things that they said in this video, but I'll save the best bit for the end. Now, I have also sat back and looked at the arguments sort of in the media about Prince Harry and the Invictus Games. And after I took the time to learn about our Australian team, once I lifted my head up from the iPad, I felt quite angry. And I thought, why am I feeling angry? What is it that's really irritating me about all this? And I thought, that's because I feel that the media are missing the point. They're missing the point of the argument. So far, we've had two main arguments. The argument on this side is that Harry is deserving of respect because he served. No argument with that from me. He is also deserving of respect because he founded the Invictus Games. So the message is, hands off, leave him alone, and let the games be a success. Again, no argument with that. On the other side, you have people that are appalled by the doco, by Heart of Invictus. They say that it was just another pot shot at his family because he mentioned in the documentary, as you all know, that he didn't receive enough support when he got home from Afghanistan. The trauma of war fizzed with the trauma of losing his mother at the age of 12, and he basically fell apart, and he felt that there wasn't adequate networks or support for him when he got home. Okay. So you have those two opposing sides. We've got one side saying, oh, shut up, stop your whinging. And then you've got the other side saying, well, all of a sudden we have to put him on a pedestal, hands off, respect him just for the duration of the games. And I object to both sides of those arguments because they are based on a false premise. And I'll explain what I mean now. So on this side, where we have to respect Harry because of his service, of course, we have to respect anyone that serves in, theatres of war. I couldn't do it. And, that's a given, isn't it? That's a given. But as far as respecting him because he was the founder of the Invictus Games, I find that to be a stretch. And I'll explain to you why I think it's a stretch in Harry's own words. So Harry had got the funding from the Royal Foundation a few months earlier, and he sat down with his then private secretary, who was a one-time captain in the Household Cavalry, Ed Lane Fox, and they called him Elf. And so he sat down with Harry, and it was basically Mr. Ed Lane Fox, or Elf, who was the one that actually got this thing moving. He said to Harry that you need to have someone to organise it. You need to have someone to basically build your idea from the ground up. Because all Harry had was a brain fart on a plane. I know that sounds harsh, but he'd been to the Warrior Games in the USA. He was inspired, fittingly, because of course they would be inspiring. And so he thought maybe I could do something similar in the UK. So then he goes to the Royal Foundation, which most of us don't have access to our own foundation to go and fund our ideas, do we? And yes, okay, it was deemed a good idea because it was a good idea. But then many months passed, nothing had been done. And so now someone allocated to him, a private secretary, basically said, well, you know what, we need to take some action. We need to get this off the ground. So he suggested calling in Sir Keith Mills because Sir Keith Mills had organised the UK Olympics. And so they decided to invite Sir Keith Mills over for a cup of tea. Now, Harry describes when he had this meeting with Sir Keith Mills, I tried to stay calm as I pointed Sir Keith to a chair and asked how he took his tea. After a few minutes of chit-chat, I made my pitch. Sir Keith listened respectfully, rapt-eyed, but when I'd finished, he ummed and ahed. All sounded very wonderful, he said, but he was semi-retired, trying to cut back on projects. He wanted to streamline his life and focus on his passions, sailing. So then Harry says how to talk a man who's just hours away from starting a holiday into rolling up his sleeves and taking on an impossible project. So Harry gave him the big spiel, right? And we all know that Harry is really great at big spiels, and he managed to pitch him. But Sir Keith actually did ask a question. Well, who have you got so far on this project? And Harry said, that's the beauty of it, Sir Keith. You see, you're the first. And then Sir Keith chuckled, probably despairingly, and said, clever. And then they said, no, really, you can get the band back together if you wish. Hire anyone you want. Then they told him that the deadline was September, which was 10 months away, and the rest, they say, is history. Because the person that put the team together to build this from an idea was Sir Keith Mills. The person that had the idea to ask Sir Keith Mills was Harry's private secretary. So you can see that the hard work, the person that built this thing, the person that really founded this thing was Sir Keith Mills. So it just irritates me a little bit when too much is made of the founder of the Invictus Games. Now, obviously we can say that Prince Harry, as a representative of the Royal Foundation and a representative of the then Queen Elizabeth II, was a royal representative, the royal face of Invictus Games. And I'm sure that helped with donors and sponsors and getting this thing off the ground. I'm sure it helped Sir Keith Mills manage to pull this whole thing together, because to have a royal face of the games was brilliant. And the fact that they got Michelle Obama on board for that first games to appear by satellite, well, it's because it was Prince Harry, grandson of Queen Elizabeth II. Now, as far as the other side of the argument, I think it's based on a false premise, because I think it was quite obvious when you watched the doco, which was really wonderful about the heroes actually taking part in the games, by the way. It's worth watching. Just fast forward through the Harry bits. But it is based on a false premise because I think it was recorded ages ago. I think that not necessarily the Invictus parts, but the bits to camera of Harry, I think it was quite obvious that it was recorded quite early in the piece. So it's not a new pot shot at the royal family. I think the pandemic obviously interrupted the rollout and the production and the distribution of this doco. So it's all come out a little later than originally expected. So it's all a little bit far removed from the Harry and Meghan saga, all a bit far removed from the book Spare, all a bit far removed from Oprah's mental health thing with Harry for Apple TV. So it probably would have made more sense if it had come out when it was first expected to come out, because then it would have some context. But to beat it up as another attack on the royal family, nah. It's all part of the one and the same narrative. And also, in his rather inept and dim way, I think Harry was trying to express that even if you have loving friends and family around you, that more professional support services are needed for returning soldiers. And if he had have gone on to make that point, which maybe he did and ended up on the cutting room floor, but I doubt it because it wouldn't have been about him, probably it would have made more sense and more people would have backed the idea. And the final thing I want to say, which is to do with my thumbnail, Invictus Unconquered, with or without Harry, I really believe that everyone is behind the Invictus Games. Everybody admires the participants of the Invictus Games. Everyone is inspired by the whole idea. We all love it. We all want to get behind it. We all feel affection and excitement about it. We don't really need the ex-royal, because in my mind, he's the ex-royal. I know by birth he's a royal, but he's an ex-royal to me. I don't think we need an ex-royal heading it anymore. And it also really irritates me that he claims that he's all about charity, and we are told that a proportion of the funds and profit from the docuseries will be donated to the Invictus Games. Well, I'm sorry, that's not good enough. We should be told that every cent will be donated other than production cost. Obviously, production costs, people have to be paid if they worked on the documentary, but any cent above production cost should go straight to the veterans, straight to support services for the veterans, or straight to the actual games themselves. And if we're just going to have an ex-soldier now as the head of the games, which again, I respect Harry for being an ex-serviceman, why can't we have pick a new ex-serviceman or woman every games to head the games, to do the opening ceremony and the closing ceremony? Why not? Let's start celebrating the people that really make these games and really matter. Now, I'm going to finish off with, like I said, the inspiration that I found learning about the Australian Invictus team. And believe me, all the teams would be inspiring. But they gave the name of a member of the team member. So in this case, I've got Mark Armstrong. And it tells you all sorts of things, his sporting background, what made him actually go to join the Invictus Games. But they asked everyone this final question, and I just want to read out a few because I think you'll really love it as much as I did. What does unconquered mean to you? And Mark Armstrong said, pretty simple really. Play fair, be nice, give your all, and don't give up. Craig Ball was asked the same question. What does unconquered mean to you? Being able to accept reality without being resigned to the negative aspects of it. That is a really brave thing to say. Having a firm belief you can have a transformative impact on your outcomes and your reality. Well, that's a lesson in a sentence, really, isn't it? Amazing. And I'm going to read you one more from Justin Donnelly. What does unconquered mean to you? It does not matter how broken I am. Every day is a blessing, and I am unconquered. Yes, you are, Justin. I have overcome so many hurdles in my life. I must press forward every day to achieve my goals. These goals can at sometimes feel unachievable. You take a step back, rethink, and then find another avenue. So this message is about never giving up, finding another way, never being defeated, picking yourself up when you're broken. I mean, it's just so impactful and so meaningful, and it matters so much. So I would like to wish the Australian team all the best for the Invictus Games. Go, guys, go for the green and gold. And I can't wait to hear what you all have to say. And maybe you can leave some messages of support in the comments for your team. And can't wait to see you again. Thank you very much. Bye.